I just went to a community consultation in Bendigo for the Royal Commission into Mental Health in Victoria. Now, these sessions are a farce. They're run by the appointed commissioners and such, like Alex Cockram, who's a psychiatrist who needs to resign. So we break up into tables, and first of all, Alex Cockram's question to the table, and then she chairs it, all right? This is the person that needs to be investigated by the Royal Commission. She's chairing a table, and we're meant to answer what is positive about the system of vile, cruel, exploitative forced psychiatry. What is positive about an exploitation racket in Victoria whereby white coats make lots of money? White coats like Alex Cockram make even more money than average psychiatrist that is the fifth highest earning bracket. So probably one of the top highest earning brackets in the country. So she asks what's positive. There is nothing about a vile, cruel exploitation racket that is positive. Now, all these people that come to this Royal Commission, most of them, very few of them, are victims. Victims of Psychiatrists have boycotted the Royal Commission because it's the same old, same violating, perpetrating, silencing system. And yes, they did try and silence me there. They brought out one of their consumer consultants. Do you want to speak alone in the quiet room so we can keep it quiet? Get stuffed. This is a protest because you are not allowing the voice of victims of psychiatrists to be heard. You, the people, need to recognise the need to abolish forced psychiatry, the need for victims to be heard, for their stories, for the people who are being tied to beds. Right now, people being tied to beds because there's 13,000 forced orders last year. So these are people who were dragged off against their will. They ask for that not to happen to them. They're forcefully dragged off, forcefully injected, held in isolation, tied to beds, electrocuted, whatever it takes for the psychiatrist to break them under torture into saying, yeah, I'll go along with things that I agree to the diagnosis, all that kind of rubbish that no one wants to agree to, because no one wants to agree to a vicious DSM slur upon their person. Of course they don't. Why would they? No one wants to agree to be forcefully exploited for human research. No one wants to be someone that's turned into a drooling mess, a dunce. They take scholars and they turn them into dunces with neuroleptics. This is 24/7 torture. And you expect people to not be outraged at a meeting when we hear the people were paid by their group, their white coat affiliated group, their hospital or their exploitation record of another kind, whereby they get people to do their programs. People were forcefully drugged and they're told to be programmed more and more into the idea that they cannot protest, that things will not change, that this is the way it is, and that they must keep quiet about it. They must not show any kind of protest whatsoever because that's aggression. And there's this carer going on there, this person who calls themselves a carer, right? Basically, this person's put their person through forced psychiatry and they haven't brought the person along. No. You know, everything about them without them is these carers. So these carers come along and they faff on about, oh, yeah, my person needs more, and I need more, you know, money. More money for the carer and more forced human experimentation for the person being put through that. They don't bring the person that's being abused along because they know that person will want to speak. They know that person will want to say abolish forced psychiatry. They know that person will look at them and say, how you said that thing about me. I hate it when you say that thing about me. So the carer wants to go along and say all these nasty, horrible things about the person they claim to care about. So I have no time for that kind of carer. The person who gets their person out of forced psychiatry and takes on the term carer only for the ways and means of being able to visit that person. People like Bernard Daniels, that beautiful man who is now dead, but fought right to the end for his son to be free from forced psychiatry. That's a person who cares about another person. You take it to the Supreme Court to get your person free. You bring that person along and demand that person be brought along to a Royal Commission meeting so they can say what they say, or at least read exactly what they want to say from a sheet of paper. How dare you speak on their behalf? How dare you? That's not caring. That's silencing. So rubbish to you carers who faff on in your low monotone voices about how you want more exploitation in rural areas. Get stuffed. We need to abolish forced psychiatry. We don't need more of this. And it is when those people come along to the meetings, either they're paid by carer organisations or they're paid by Mind Australia or some other mental health racketeer organisation, there is no support. There is no care while there is forced psychiatry. The only people who are being supportive to the victims are those who validate that it is an abusive, cruel system and it must be abolished. As for Alex Cockram and any other psychiatrist, including Patrick McGorry, they really need to resign. I mean, Western Health, you oversaw Western Health, Alex Cockram. How dare you think you can stand over us and silence us? How dare you be at a meeting thinking you can direct us? You must resign. You are a conflict of interest. You are turning this Royal Commission into a farce. You are part of the horrible corruption and you need to be investigated. What about the victims who want to speak out against Alex Cockram? Why is she being allowed to intimidate them at these meetings? It's horrible. And oh, yeah. I mean, I wasn't even speaking out against the crimes that Alex Cockram had committed. Yet I was being asked time and time again to speak in a lower voice. I mean, I couldn't hear half of the people at the table because they're speaking in really, really low voice. And I've got fine hearing. The point is, they don't want to hear anybody. They just want to write it up, how they want to write it up, and give the pieces of pie to the people that have the golden handshakes. And those perpetrators who get the government funds will increase the violations. So right now, as we speak, Footscray Hospital is getting an increase in its hospital violation units, like the forced electrocution and all that. They're expanding that. Instead of decreasing and closing off and validating those people who have been violated and saying, well, no, we're not going to have any more forced psychiatry, they're saying, oh, let's increase it. Whoever supports a system of increasing the mental health associations, the eugenics organisation, which is the Mental Health Association, and psychiatrists' regime whereby they're allowed to procure live human specimens by force and exploit them for most of them for the rest of their life. Take them while young and exploit them the rest of their life without any compensation, without even allowing these victims to be heard in the mainstream media. This is just disgusting. It's just disgusting. This is an absolute farce. These meetings need a really strong protest to be heard at all. And are we actually going to be written down and heard at all? Well, yes, we'll put in submissions. Of course I have. and I put in a submission for every one of those things, and I've gone to the meetings. So this is where we're at with the Royal Commission, this farce of a Royal Commission. We are standing up for the people who are currently being arbitrarily detained and tortured in the psych wards, who are not being given any kind of support from the commissioners to be allowed to speak. And we were going to push for that more and more, because those people need to be heard. They need to be heard and not told they can't even have a right to have a say in the Royal Commission. Let them speak. Let them write something. Let them be heard. All right. Do put things in, please. But understand, just be really forceful. There's no pussyfooting around it. There's no soft pedaling it. There's no when people say, "Oh, what a mental health personnel worker." This is obviously a clinician or a psych nurse of some kind. Say, "Oh, what about the consumers who want to talk about treatment?" Excuse me, violator. You do not speak for victims of psychiatrists. And victims of psychiatrists is what we are, because we have been violated. And this is an inquiry, a legal inquiry, a government inquiry. It is not something you can put terms on us about. It is meant to be us, the victims of psychiatrists, being heard, because we have been the ones that have been asking for a Royal Commission. Now, we understand that the government and their violating whitecoats who run this enormous exploitation racket for massive amounts of money from our flesh, mind. These people want it covered up. They want it expanded, even if they can possibly do it. But they certainly don't want it exposed. But it must be exposed.